Hey, how's it going, everyone? So we have this lawnmower here that hasn't quite had the issue yet, but it's going to be pretty close. The issue being is the pull cord. So the pull cord is on its last leg. So what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to replace the pull cord on a lawnmower. I know what you're thinking, my lawnmower doesn't look anything like this. And that's fine. The reason why I say that is they're all basically the same. Now, of course, with every good how-to video, there's going to be caveats. And the caveat is, if you have like a Honda or anything that you just have to take the pull cord off, you have an even easier job. What I mean by that is, there's usually like 3 to 4 screws. You can actually see the recoil itself. Sometimes you'll see them and they're like covered in plastic. You have to take the plastic off. Whatever the case may be, those are, like I said, even easier. However, the process is the same. That's the beautiful part about these. They try to keep it simple, and by doing so, all of them use the same mechanism. So the same principle can be applied to all of them. So if yours does not look like this, go ahead and skip to this time. And you can avoid having to watch me take this off. Now, if yours does look like this, or is a larger flathead, these are going to be basically the same except for a few minute differences. So go ahead and watch and I'll explain. Now on this one, I just have to take the dipstick out and put it someplace clean. Just know if you have the larger one, you're going to have to take off this plastic cover, and you're going to have like a little ring that you have to take off and fold the gas tank back. And once you fold the gas tank back, you should be exactly where we are right now. So a little bit more of a process, but not horribly bad. It is, however, a process, so keep that in mind when doing this. 3/8 is going to be your friend. This is a Briggs, so there's no metric on here. I just took the screw off the front. The bigger versions can have 2. However, these screws on the big version are going to be facing down rather than in. Like I said, minute differences. Something that is the same on both of them is the oil dipstick is going to be physically connected to the actual shroud. For this one, I believe it's a 1/4 inch. For the larger Briggs, it should be a 5/16. Same thing with the ring. If you have the one with the ring, it's also going to be a 5/16. Now you don't have to take the other one out. It's going to kind of look like you do, because the other one, unlike this one, has a bracket on the side. The bracket is going to be on the top of it. You don't have to do anything. You just have to pull the dipstick tube out, twist it off to the side, shove it back in, so you don't get any dirt or junk in the oil. Now, we should be good to go. I'm going to remove the pull cord from the handle, which, depending on your handle style, could be as easy as unscrewing like a little hook, kind of like what I have to do. Sometimes you have to, there's like this weird little S curve in it. Now, whatever yours looks like, just take it off. I would not, however, recommend cutting it, because that's going to just put the spring all the way back into the shroud, and while it's not the end of the world, it just means we're going to have to retwist it. We've come to the time where we have to get the new recoil cord, rope, whatever you want to call it. Now on a lawnmower that you have the handle mounted to the bar, you're going to want about 7.5, even 8 feet. I like to do about 7.5 feet. Now for me, I'm a little over 6 feet tall, so it's basically like me holding this big roll above my head until the bottom of the line is pretty much touching my toes, and that's about as much as I need. They also sell kits if you have a kit, you don't have to do anything. It should be roughly long enough. It might be too long. Too long is better than too short, because we could cut that. If you're doing like me, we want to make sure our ends are nice and not frayed. This is a synthetic rope, synthetic fiber rope, so it can melt. If you have like a cotton, I wouldn't necessarily do this, but there we go. And don't worry, it doesn't burn you. It might get in your hands, but as long as you don't let it sit there, you're not going to have to worry about it. Okay. Now we have that done. We're going to need a pair of clippers and a random screwdriver. It doesn't really matter what type it is, because we're just kind of using it to keep our place. I personally don't need a screwdriver, but I'm going to show you why you might. Now, if you are in that awkward situation where your rope broke, this is not going to have any tension on it at all. This one has a little bit of tension. Not much, but a little bit. If yours is like mine, you're doing this before it breaks, what you're going to want to do is pull the cord all the way out. Okay. Now, this is why I said you're going to want to have a pair of, or a screwdriver. If there's holes in the top of your shroud, like Honda has, the bigger Briggs has, you can just shove this through the hole, and this whole recoil is going to be held into place by it. I don't have that luxury because I don't have any of those holders. There's this little nub right here though. I'm going to put my thumb on. Hopefully you can see it. And that's going to be our good friend. Now, if yours did break, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to twist this recoil. Now, what I mean by that is, right now you can tell it's wanting to go clockwise, so you need to twist it counterclockwise. Easiest way to do that is by holding this and then spinning the whole shroud. Spin about 6 to 7 times. If it starts to get really tight, stop. And you know when you're done, when you are done, make sure in here where the cable or the rope would come out is facing this hole. Now this next part can be real annoying, or it can be real easy. So we're going to now cut the line. And before we cut it, before we do anything, what we could do, if you are like me, you're having to hold it, you might want to kind of prepare your handle. I didn't do that, but I'll show you what we do instead. So now, we just pull the remaining line out. This is the part that can be hard. Depending on how large of a recoil you have, this can be a lot easier. I feel like the larger ones are definitely a lot easier than the smaller ones. This is pretty small, so it should be a good demonstration of aggravation. I like to go through here. Now, can you see that little hole right here? My goal is to take the line and kind of guide it in there, like so. And then once I have it, pull it through. Now, something you can do beforehand, I don't really do it because it's not that hard, so you could tie a knot in one side of it, or on one side of it. I don't do it because sometimes you can attempt to do this a few times, and unless you want to continue to redo the end, sometimes the end can get a little frayed, so you could just flip it over and redo it. If you have a larger recoil, might behoove you to do a larger knot. This is pretty small, so rather small knots should be sufficient. Now at this point in time, we're going to want to tie a real quick knot into the line. Let me explain why. Because if you can't use a screwdriver like me, then that is going to hold it into place while we work on the handle. Every handle is going to be different. I'm not going to explain everything. Basically, some will have pieces, some will not. Some will just have a hole you have to put a line through. Whatever yours is like, take the old line out. And the old line, if you still have it, can be used for other stuff. I use it, I put it in my truck sometimes. I use it to tie stuff down. And when it gets old, I just simply throw it away. There we go. That is nice and tight. Now we can go ahead and undo the knot. Ideally, it would come undone. Apparently not. There we go. Don't know why that was so difficult. Now, sometimes on a lawnmower, your recoil's not going to recoil all the way. That's normal. If you have like this or this much, or if it's less than like 2 feet, you're probably fine. So at this point in time, you should be good to go to put it back on your machine. If you were able to put the screwdriver in, at this point in time, since you have your handle done, you can remove the screwdriver. Just be careful and hold on to the line, otherwise it can recoil back and the handle might flip and hit you in the face. So don't do that. Then you just install the recoil in the reverse order how you took it off. Pretty simple. Now, what are a few things that can go wrong and how to avoid them? Well, I'm glad you asked that. Go ahead and continue to watch and I'll explain that for you. So, your spring could be broken. That is a fairly common one that can happen. How do you know your spring is broken? Well, if you try to wind it up and it doesn't wind up, then it's pretty much guaranteed that's the problem. Your spring's broken. You can replace the spring in most of them. Sometimes, especially in the cases like Honda, they sell aftermarket ones that are real cheap. Make sure the other side is the same. It is, okay. So, you might just be better off getting a new aftermarket one. So, keep that in mind as well. Another problem is it could be very tight and you're unable to get the string in. Basically, you just need to get a thinner gauge string or just a thinner string. So before you do this and you buy a string, make sure you get the ones that are thick enough or not too thick. Too thick, you're going to run into two problems. You won't be able to actually put it through the hole. I get it. And two, you're also not going to have enough space in the recoil itself, and it will start to bunch up when you release it. So even if you can physically install it, when it comes back time to release it and have it wind up, it could be so thick that the recoil can't hold it all. And then you end up with a situation of you think it's okay, you pull on it, and then it becomes unraveled, gets bound up, you hurt your hand because you weren't expecting that. Nothing good. So, same thickness of line. I prefer this style, specifically made for that. I mean, not getting paid for it, but I believe this is made by Stens. Yeah, Stens is a 3mm line. Pretty good quality. I have had nothing but good things to say about it. Seems to last a real long time. Another thing is sometimes when putting on this cover piece, if you do have one, you might have to put the line through the cover before you tie the knot on the handle. Those are a little more rare, but they do happen. Oh, you didn't have to take off that. Never mind. I thought you did. Anyway, so keep an eye out on your cover. If you can't put the handle through the cover, just know that you're going to have to put the line through the cover, and you're going to have to cut the line in order to get it off. So, not ideal. If you do have to cut it, I would recommend tying that knot if it's still there, and just having the knot kind of hold the spring tension in place while you take off the cover. And those are really the main things. The other things that might happen that are kind of rare is that when you take the recoil off, you notice that some of your pieces are broken. Obviously, if that happens, you need to get a new one. Or sometimes you can actually buy those pieces. It just depends on what pieces are broken. If it's the spring, you can't fix it. You can get it hot, you can bend it. Just know putting the spring back in is a major pain. There is a way of doing it that'll make it easier. I'll tell it to you at the end, so stay tuned if you do want to know that. I'm not going to be able to show you, but I will tell you and instruct you how. So now we are good to go. I'm going to put this back on the handle and we'll give it a pull and see what happens. Here's a random tip for you. If yours is like this, you don't have enough to actually go to the holder on the bar, make sure to pull the bail down and gently pull on it. Worst case scenario is it starts. More likely than not it won't, because you're gently doing it. But what that does is it also releases the brake, so you're not fighting the engine brake, which is generally not a good idea to fight a brake. It's doing its job. Don't anger it. Okay. So now we're good. Another problem, the reason why we test it is obviously if it's yours, you're going to want to use it in the future. But two, sometimes when you put the recoil back on, the mechanism inside won't attach correctly to the cup that it has to use to spin the motor over. And if you feel any tension on there, take the cover off again, reposition it, try again. You can just hold on to it and try to pull, but unless your bail's down, it can be a little hard. But, you know, that's however you want to do it. So that is how you replace a line. Real simple. Like I said, all of them are more or less the same. As we saw, this one is probably the hardest of them, and look how long it took me. Very few minutes, very few times. If you weren't here, it would take me even less time. It's not that hard of a process. You need very simple tools, so you don't have to worry about anything like special or elaborate. And I did tell you, I would tell you how to put a spring in. So, in the housing, you have your big spring, it's just everywhere, and you're trying to take a zip tie and wind it up. You're trying to take a piece of line and wind it up so you could dip it in there. First mistake. All you need are your two thumbs. If you don't have two thumbs, then you might want to skip this next part. You take your housing, you figure out, because on both ends there's a loop, the outside and the inside. On the outside, you figure out how you need to wind it. And once you figure that out, you put the end of the hook in the slot that needs to be, usually there's a round piece that has like a piece of metal coming up, and inside there fits the spring. And then it's usually in the center there's like a post that the mechanism, whatever type they're using, will kind of catch the other end of the spring. So you take the outside of the spring, put it in its little groove, take your thumb and roll while your other thumb is holding it in place. One thumb rolls the spring in. Once it gets to your other thumb, that other thumb holds it in place, and you roll it again, and you roll it again, and you roll it again, and you roll it again. Easiest way. Once I get to a point where I have one, I will make a video on it. It is 100% the best way of doing it. Your hands will get dirty, I get it, it sucks. I don't like doing that either, and it's the nasty type of grease too. But it's so much better than using zip ties or line or anything like that, because let me explain what will happen. you'll wind it, and it'll be super tight, and you'll be able to fit in that little area. Then you go to cut the zip tie off, and then it'll spring out and hold, but that zip tie is stuck. So then you try to pull the zip tie out, and the whole thing flies out and hits you in the nose. Or you let it go, you cut the zip tie, and the whole thing just flies out, and you're starting over from square one. Roll it in with your thumbs. It doesn't feel great, but that's the easiest way, and it's the fastest way. If this was a situation with this one, I could roll that whole thing in about 30 seconds, if that. Pretty easy. So I'm going to leave it at that. Follow me on Instagram as Rollins101. If you like what you see, keep watching. Definitely subscribe. If this helped you out, put a thumbs up and let me know what type of machine you have this helped you out on. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. If you need any personalized help, feel free to become a member. That is a perk. I'll be happy to help you out. I'll catch you in the next video. You have a good night.